What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on? Chiefs win another one. They play in some crazy games. The Falcons, on the night that they inducted a legend, who also happens to be their owner, into the Ring of Honor, lose a tight game. We will dive into this game right off the bat. Obviously, the story was going to be, the Chiefs get another call. Then if the Falcons got a makeup call and a bunch of other calls, and they still couldn't get it done, down 5, driving to win the game, and they get stuffed on fourth and inches. So we will that play call to me. Don't love it. We'll dive into it right off the top, and then like we do on every Sunday night, a little overrated, underrated. Colin and I find it on YouTube, find it on podcast. We go live at the set of afternoon games, like the hour between basically when the Cowboys game ended till the start of this game. Actually went into a little bit of this game. It was 7-0 when we finished, and I went out and started watching the game before a little pizza arrived at halftime. So we'll do a little overrated, underrated from around the National Football League. How about Andy Dalton? Andy Dalton. Maybe the Panthers just had a quarterback problem. We'll talk about a little bit of everything, though. But week 3, I guess it's not quite in the books because we got a double. I hate these doubleheaders. I really do. Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night is a standalone game. Not standalone games, but it's out of my control, so we'll just watch them both. And we'll be live tomorrow. I'll technically record, but we'll have a podcast out tomorrow as well after those games. But before we dive into some football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Do you want to go to a game? Do you want to go to a concert? I just saw Morgan Wallen does this walkout. And he always has famous people, Tom Brady, Mike Tyson, whatever town he's in, has a lot of NFL guys walk out with him. He's playing at Neyland Stadium, where the Tennessee Volunteers play. There's like 100,000 people. And he had Josh Heupel, who just got an enormous win against the Sooners, which I think I'm going to go to the Sooners against Texas here in a couple weeks in Dallas. Hopefully the tickets drop a little bit. And Nico, the quarterback, and Peyton Manning walked out with him. Peyton Manning was in a full uniform with pads and put on his helmet. It was classic. But if you want to go to one of those concerts, you want to go to a comedy show, laugh, obviously any football game, pro or college, do it on us because Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with my friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Okay, let's dive into the game. Big picture, I thought it was really fun. Both those two teams, and one thing we've learned about Atlanta is they're a really physical team. They are really good on defense. I've been really impressed. And clearly the Chiefs have one of the best things going right now because their defense, they're a defensive team. That's what they are. The days of scoring 50 points, throwing for 450 yards, it's not going to happen. And they don't care. They are very, very comfortable playing in that game. So when the Falcons are driving, really they had 2 drives to take the lead. And I'm glad because a conversation, a narrative, fair or not. Listen, I'm biased. I'm not fazed when the Chiefs get the calls. But I understand being on the other end of it. It feels like the other team is constantly getting screwed. And Kyle Pitts, who, should have been called on the pass on 3rd down for a pass interference. It's not called. Next play, Spags dials up a great blitz, turn the ball over. Then they get the ball back. And they get a makeup call. It happens all the time in the NBA. And it happened tonight in the NFL. And then they got a couple other calls. So I do not want to hear about the refs were in the bag for the Chiefs. Because they blew it. They missed the call on Pitts, which should have been called by the letter of the law. Even though that play, that call, doesn't bother me in most situations. But I get it. Standalone game Sunday night. Didn't get called. I think it's fair for people to be like, oh, this is BS. Then the Falcons got the ball back with more than enough time and timeouts and got several calls. A horse collar, a PI that was not PI because the defender gets a spot to own the ground too when Ray runs into him. And it came down to a 4th and inches. And in my personal opinion, on a 4th and inches play, I don't love lateral runs. And in theory, the Falcons are a very good running team because Bijan Robinson is easily one of the most talented backs in the league. But on a lateral run in a zone running scheme, it is going to open holes for the linebacker, especially when the defense is in like a goal line set. So to get the edge, especially on a defense, I would say this about the Chiefs. I don't think there is a defense in the league, 1 through 11, who's as good, who's as well coached, whose players are as smart, and top to bottom as physical as the Chiefs. We'll see with the Steelers. Obviously, they're really good this year on defense. The Falcons are solid on defense too. I don't think their D-line is as good as the Chiefs. But every guy on Kansas City plays downhill, will tackle, will throw their body around, which is obviously rare. I would say more than half the NFL has holes on defense when it comes to physicality. That ain't an issue with the Chiefs. So when you run a lateral run and they're in a goal line type set when they know you're going to run the ball and you choose to try to get to the edge, it's just not a very physical play. And on that, obviously, Bolton shoots the gap and makes a pretty easy tackle for a several yard loss. Now, if you want to tell me sneaking Cousins, I'm not saying I have the correct play call, but to me, trying to get to an edge in a situation like that, it's a softer run. I don't like it. Now, I'm not going to crush Atlanta. I actually was a hater of them coming into the season. They're clearly a lot better than I thought because the last 2 weeks, it got very physical and they matched it. And maybe a Falcons fan would say, we were physical last year as our quarterback play. I go, okay. But there's a big difference of playing in games that don't matter and playing in some bright light games. Tonight was a huge game after you won last week. And they matched the physicality. The Chiefs, to me, are the best defense in the league. And they've been that way for a while. Like I said, I think, them and the Vikings have the 2 best defensive coordinators. I think a couple of weeks ago, I said Flores was the best DC who's not a head coach. Obviously, I forgot about Spags. And those 2 guys are elite. And their defenses dominate. And on that given play, and really all night down the stretch, is there a coordinator right now, Spags loves to blitz, who calls blitzes and hits them and has guys free coming at the quarterback more often than that? I watched a lot of football today. You see a lot of blitzes that don't even get remotely close. Yet every time, especially in big spots, when he makes the call to bring a backer, to bring a safety, those guys are altering the quarterback. If they do not hit him right as he's throwing, they're making him move off a spot. The pressure always impacts the play. And you can't say that about a lot of defenses because a lot of times their blitzes don't work. They get picked up. It's coming from too far away, whatever it may be. And we don't talk about this a lot because it is hard to quantify, but that speaks to having really, really intelligent players. It speaks to having a group that has now played together for a long time. They all speak the same language. This is not a unit that gets a lot of turnover. They've had the same guy now for years. So what they do works. They have the same unity top to bottom, and from Veach and Andy, what they look for on defense, the type player Spags likes, the type players he needs, and it works. So when me and Colin finish and I go out there and I'm watching the first half and a big conversation was, where is Travis Kelce? Is Travis Kelce washed? It's like, guys, 1, he's an older player now. 2, the style in which the Chiefs have played early in the season is not reflective to, I think, the way we think about the Chiefs. Their first 2 games, Mahomes attempted 28 and 25 passes. He completed a total of 38 passes. Like, they're not throwing the ball. They did tonight, but that's not really the way that they play. Completely different. They are much closer. They're basically just a better version of what we're seeing with the Pittsburgh Steelers because they have Patrick Mahomes, all right? But they want to play defense. They're very, very comfortable playing a game in the high teens and winning it that way. They were like that last year. They were like that 2 years ago, and they're like that again. Now, I do believe in Rashee Rice. Somehow he avoided the timing of his Lamborghini incident where he left the scene, and he's not going to get in trouble this year. He's a high-end wide receiver. He's really, really good. Worthy, clearly a work in progress. Had a big game week 1. Tonight, little miscommunication on the one pass. Him coming across. He sits because he's probably like, that's what Kelsey does all the time. He just sits in an open spot. Mahomes thought he was going to keep going, and they mistimed the play. Maybe in a year, maybe in 7 games, that won't happen. But early on, it's going to happen. They're relying on Juju Smith-Schuster. Their running back tonight, because Pacheco broke his leg, is a guy whose family, his sister, got married today on a Sunday. They had this wedding planned, as of the broadcast, for well over a year. So that means their own family, even though this guy, I had to Google him. I mean, I'd been hearing about him early on in the season, but I didn't quite know his story, besides that he played at UCLA last year. Well, he was at Ball State 2 years ago, ran for 1,500 yards. So I would imagine when they were planning this wedding, he was maybe making the transition between Ball State and UCLA. They choose a date. It never crossed their own family's mind. And think about this in life. I would say, in my personal experience, no one believes in me more than me. But I would put a very, very close second in my immediate family, especially my parents. So that means his sister and their parents came up with, he's not going to be playing in the NFL. He's not only playing in the NFL because he made the defending multiple-time champions, made the roster at a training camp. 2 weeks into the season, because of an injury, he's their starting running back and leads the team in carries. Think about that. That's one of the most incredible stories I've ever seen. Obviously, it's been fun. We've seen he has the alligator. But his family scheduled the wedding because they did not believe that their own son, their own brother, was an NFL player. That's who the Chiefs are playing with. So their team is just dramatically different from, I think, the way we, not necessarily myself, but just the overall narrative of their squad. And they're a champion for a reason. They are elite on defense. They're awesome. They have one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, who actually has been a little up and down this season. Threw an awful pick to Justin Simmons in the corner of the end zone. It was easy. I mean, Simmons barely even had to jump. It's one of those that if it was an average quarterback, if that's Daniel Jones or even a Carr or a Cousins, we crush him for. But because he's Mahomes, and people often say this, like, he doesn't get criticized as much. Well, yeah, because he doesn't do that shit when it matters. So if he does it in mid-September or October, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, cancel the season? Of course not. Because I've seen him in the biggest spots not make that mistake. But Kelsey, 2 things. They try to keep him fresh for the end of the season, and they're just not going to throw to him like they once did. I would imagine if we truly broke him down, he doesn't get open as much. But because of their receiving core and the lack of quote-unquote elite threats on the outside, he gets much more focused these day and age. Like, to me, when I think about the Chiefs, if you're slowing them down on offense, obviously corral Kelsey and try to slow down the run. Like, Andy, a guy who loves passing, has no problem. He did it last year with Pacheco, and he's doing it again with Pacheco and Steele. He will run the ball, slow it down, because he knows his defense can win him games. And he just needs Mahomes not to turn it over. And that's been a little bit of a bugaboo so far early in the season. But this team's 3-0. I would say they haven't come close to playing like an A- game. And their defense, if it stays relatively healthy, can carry them to 12, 13 wins pretty easily. So that was a big win. I also think it was an impressive loss. Like, Cousins has limitations. If you can pressure him, he can't ad-lib. It's why we were so hard last week on Fangio in that spot. It's like, Vic never blitzes. Well, Vic, if you're not getting pressure, as Jay Gruden told me last week, Kirk Cousins would be like one of the best 7-on-7 quarterbacks in the NFL. because he's accurate. If his feet can be set, he can make all the throws. But when he has to move, unlike Mahomes and a lot of the other top quarterbacks who are much better athletes, they can move, ad lib, and make all these throws. Cousins has to operate within that couple yard radius inside the pocket. And when he can step up, can make some nice throws. He did it tonight. When he has to move, balls are all over the fucking map. And you got problems. It's why his ceiling, even when he's on, is never as high as the top guys. And when he plays the best defenses, as he did tonight, you're like, yeah, he was okay. He's fine. He's clearly an upgrade from what they've had the last couple years. But, like, is he good enough to win a Super Bowl with? No. Is he good enough to make the playoffs with? I would say probably. And I was someone, I think you consider me an Atlanta doubter, an Atlanta hater coming into this season. They're better than I thought. Now, anytime you find yourself in a little bit of a hole, we know Tampa and New Orleans are by no means any pushovers. It's not a shoo-in thing, but they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. And I just didn't love that play call in that spot. But overall, thought they played pretty well. Kyle Pitts showed some life. Drake London is obviously, a really good wide receiver. I love Ray McLeod. Miss him on the 49ers. And Bijan is, top 5 running back talent in the league. So if I'm a Falcons fan, it sucks losing tonight on a night when your owner, how does the owner get inducted into the Ring of Honor? How does that process play out? The Falcons tweeted, like, what a night. It's like, yeah, he owns the team. Puts himself in the ring. Is this because, like, when I'm dead, I want my name up there? I mean, I get it. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You own the team. A little cheesy to me. But, hey, that's part of being a guy with billions of dollars. You can do whatever the hell you want. But overall, I think if you're a Falcons fan, you feel pretty good. But, yeah, I mean, that play call, man. I like going vertical in short yardage situations. I get it. You're not going to run the tush push. But trying to get to the edges against a defense that's really fast, against a defense that can penetrate, feels like a lot more can go wrong than go well. So, big win for the defending champs. They're 3-0. And just finding a way in Atlanta. Got to dust themselves off. But I think, after pulling off that comeback last week against the Eagles and playing the Chiefs as well as they did tonight, in a weird way, you kind of got to feel good about yourself. I love touchdowns. Tutties, taking it to the house, in for 6. I call them tugs. Whenever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, we do not care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something as simple like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many touchdowns will be in a game. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Before we get into overrated, underrated, I do want to really quick, because Colin and I talked about it, but I just spent the last couple hours thinking about this Niners-Rams game. Like the Cowboys. I know they came back at the end, but, like, you got your ass kicked. Like, you just need to look in the mirror and figure some shit out. The Niners not only should have won the game, they should have won the game by like 20 points. And they couldn't figure it out. And their quarterback was incredible. And they were playing a guy, and I'm not a huge, even when I was hard on Brandon Staley, I'll do it a little easier with coaches, but I would say in most walks of life, I'm not a big call for someone's job guy. Like, especially with players, it is very, very difficult to make the NFL. And guys will get cut. It's inevitable, but, like, you got to be pretty egregious for me to be like, you need to cut this guy. I remember when, like, 2021 and 22 was going on, And I knew so many friends of friends. I was living in the Bay Area at the time that worked for all these tech companies. They were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, like new people making $400,000 or $500,000, and they were working 10 hours a week. Some of these companies I was invested in, and the stocks were plummeting. I'm like, I'm not calling like these people need to be fired, but this is not right. Fucking girls going to the country club 4 days a week, cashing $500,000, doing nothing. What inevitably happened? They got fired because we live in a production based society. And whether you're in certain industries in the private sector or it's the NFL, you have to prove that you're producing. And if you're not, you're a liability. And at any moment, it could be over. Speaks for myself, speaks for a lot of people listening. That's the way the world works. And the 49ers rolled out a guy today named Ronnie Bell, who they drafted a couple years ago from Michigan. And he dropped multiple passes and one that probably would have sealed the game. And part of the reason he's out there because, one, their first rounder got shot on Market Street, got very lucky he didn't die on the site, let alone at the hospital. The doctor said it's one of the craziest miracles they've ever seen. Probably a 2 out of 100 chance that someone in that situation would be unfazed, let alone live. Obviously, Debo's injured. It happens. You got to play random guys. And Ray McLeod, who is a really good, solid role player in the NFL, you can't afford to keep. He's on the Falcons now. So they're rolling out this guy, Ronnie Bell, who plays wide receiver. He cannot catch the ball. And listen, the 49ers special teams coaching has been an embarrassment for the majority of Kyle Shanahan's tenure. Kind of been the opposite. I guess the Rams had a bad special teams last year, but they've made big special teams moments in the history of Sean McVay's tenure. For Kyle, they have had so many blown coverages, given up fake punts, multiple missed field goals. They missed a big one today. You're not going to fire the special teams coach in the middle of the season. There's no one else to hire. It is what it'd be pointless for me to say that. But if you cannot catch and you play wide receiver, you need to be cut. Like, you can't dress. Because if you can't do a role, whatever your role is, right? If I can't cover anybody and I'm on dressing for game day and we have a couple injuries in the secondary, I have to play on defense. And if I can't cover, I'm immediately a liability. And I could lose us a game. That's football. And you only get 17 of these. So every game matters. And at the end of the season, it could be the difference of getting a wild card spot and not. Could be the difference of winning a division and getting a home game in the playoffs and playing on the road. These games have consequences. Losing a game in September is just as bad as losing a game in December. They all count the same. If the 49ers are serious, they cut Ronnie Bell tomorrow. He cannot be on the roster. If you want to put him on the practice squad because you like him, listen, that's fine. I'm not saying the guy should be out of the NFL. He cannot be wearing pads on a Sunday and you put him in a game to run routes and catch balls when he literally can't catch. Like, that's low-level football. That's what shitty teams do. And that's what the 49ers did today. And that's why the Rams, with a bunch of guys besides Stafford that you have never heard of, completed one of the more impressive upsets I've seen in a while. Obviously, the 49ers have lost a couple Super Bowls over the last half decade. You could make an argument it doesn't get any worse than losing the Super Bowl. That's the worst regular season loss of the Kyle Shanahan era. That's an embarrassment. And it's on him when he's rolling out guys that have no chance to do their role. I'm watching the game. Maria's a huge Niner fan. The ball that he dropped at the end of the game, she thought that he was batting it away. It was that bad. Most guys go up and high point it, even if it bounced. He swung his hands forward. It was a joke. It really was. Okay, let's do some overrated, underrated. Obviously, the 49ers pretty overrated right now. The number one overrated thing in the NFL, clearly, and listen, I hopped on this bandwagon. I picked this team to win the division. The Dallas Cowboys defense the last 2 weeks looks like a team that's going to win 2 or 3 games. And I understand the Saints were coming in like a freight train. The Ravens were 0-2 and had looked like shit last week. They blew a 10-point lead to the Raiders, who just got blown out by Andy Dalton. And at one point in time during the game, you're like, are the Ravens going to run for 500 yards? And here's the thing with the Cowboys. They are great front runners. And sometimes that's a very negative term. Like when things are going well, it's just in any walk of life, like people are happy. When things are going bad, people go into the tank. Some teams are just built when I'm leading the game, my defense, which is not some run stuffing defense, they're good at pass rushing. And we got DBs in theory that can cover. So I'm much better when I have a 10-point lead in the second half because my defense can play to their strengths. My best player on defense is a pass rusher. He's not a run stuffer. Well, when you just run at Micah Parsons, he's not exactly Haloti Ngata. So when you get up on the Cowboys and can lean on them, it negates their strength because they don't get to play the pass. They got to stop the run. And we've seen 2 weeks in a row, teams just lean on them. And they look small. And they got shoved around. I told this to Colin earlier today. The final score of that game does not reflect what we witnessed. Not even close. That's one of the fakest scores of the season. That was an ass kicking. Cowboys got an onside kick. It was not close at all. They got demolished in that game. That game was over when it was 28-6. You might go, well, 28-25. Well, great. You got your ass kicked. And the Cowboys now play the Giants on Thursday Night Football, which, I don't know, borderline their season. What are they going to start 1-3 and come storming back? No chance. So you can't beat the Giants on a short week. It's on the road. Tough, sneaky, tough game. The Giants actually look pretty good, but Cowboys defense just looks atrocious. Talk about overrated. Underrated. You know, I listened to the discourse last week about Bryce Young and a lot of former players and, you know, people on television like the Mel Kipers of the world that thought the world of Bryce Young. And full disclosure, I was pro Bryce Young. I would have taken him as well over CJ Stroud. So I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback when I say they made the wrong pick. Because I, like many people around the NFL, would have done the same thing. But then we watched the guy play with several different coaches and several different pieces. And independent of his organization, he was atrocious. Like, despite your owner and despite your play calling, there are going to be plays when you're just sitting there in the pocket and there is a guy wide open. And that has nothing to do with the dysfunction in the organization. You're either making the pass or you're not. And Bryce was just consistently not even coming remotely close to making the pass. And then Andy Dalton comes in, a guy who, let's face it, most people make fun of. He looked like Joe fucking Montana today. I get he's playing the Raiders, who, as Antonio Pierce said after the game, felt like a lot of guys on his own team quit. So Andy Dalton and that offense, which has been putrid, as Rich Gannon said last week on NFL radio when I was driving around, they had not had a lead during actual regulation of a game for 10 straight weeks dating back to last season. The 2 games they had won over that stretch were on last-second field goals. They had just never been up 7-0 or 10-7 at any point in a game over the last 10 weeks. And today they came out. He's the first quarterback this season to throw for 300 yards and throw 3 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half. You know why? He just looked like a normal NFL player. And you know an underrated part about the NFL is having a capable backup. Because most times your backup is going to be a former starter and a guy that's easy to make fun of. But if that guy gets inserted, can you win with him? Because how many good teams around the NFL wish Andy Dalton was their backup? Because ultimately with the Panthers, it doesn't really matter. They're clearly not going to go to the playoffs with Andy Dalton. But if you were the Chiefs, if you were the Bills, if you were one of these teams, and your quarter, like Mahomes, if he had that play where he tried to kneel it and his knee kind of got bent funny, what if he just had to miss a couple weeks? Could they win with Carson Wentz? I think we'd say, yeah, because of the defense and Andy, but what if Carson's just terrible? Like, one thing I know about Andy Dalton is, like, he can just play in the NFL. And when he's on, he's not bad. And today, obviously, he was really good, but I do think that was more a reflection of, like, Andy Dalton today is light years better than Bryce Young. And I think he's a guy that's easy for everyone to make fun of. And it almost feels a little unfair. Overrated. This guy's the most overrated coach in the NFL by a mile. He has a huge media contingent behind him. He wears designer clothes. He's got a $50K watch on, and he wears capris. He's yet to win a big game in his NFL career. And now, because Tua has a concussion, is gone for who knows how long, has to play with random quarterbacks. And his team looks like shit. If Tua's not able to come back this year, Miami is liable to lose every single game they play. And that includes any game they play against the Patriots. Because Mike McDaniel, who's just some genius, one, he wasn't winning big games when he had Tua. They started 9-3 last year because they play great in the sun. The moment it gets cold, they imploded, and now they're imploding again. And I didn't like him as a playoff team this year with Tua. Looked pretty on point before Tua got concussed again. Obviously, there can't be a soul that likes him now when they're rolling out random quarterbacks named Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. Underrated. I said this before the draft, partly because I was just hearing this around the NFL, is there were countless teams in the NFL, and most of them had no access to either of these two players, so it didn't necessarily matter, but you still rank your draft board, that had Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison. Now, it's not a criticism of Marvin Harrison, just like there were teams with Julio Jones and AJ Green. You got to rank the two of them. Like you can't have both guys number one. I do think Malik Neighbors has a chance to be a superstar. I mean, today, his touchdown in the corner of the end zone where he drags his feet, his athleticism, his explosiveness, his ability to jump, the dude is a freak show. And these last 2 weeks, holy shit, hold on to your ass. Who knows how it's going to go throughout the season? Ultimately, his quarterback's Daniel Jones, and at any moment can throw 3 interceptions and have 2 fumbles in a game. But if Daniel Jones is just solid and can get that young kid the ball, hold on to your ass if you're a defense. I had the volume on for a minute of that game today, the Giants and the Browns. And the one thing the broadcast kept saying is Jim Schwartz told us in the meetings, this guy's got a chance to be special. And I don't think he's just saying that. He knows. You see him on tape. Like, this guy is a baller. Overrated. When things are easy, solid players, like when your defense and your running game is kicking ass, it can make kind of a mid-level quarterback look like a star. If he has to throw for less than 15 passing attempts and half of them are just kind of layups. Today, in a huge spot, down 3 points against a team that's defense was playing awesome, Derek Carr threw one of the worst interceptions you'll see so far through 3 weeks. You don't need a touchdown. You don't need a huge explosive play there. The only thing you cannot do is throw that pass. And Derek has just had so many of these throughout his career where it's like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Throw the ball into the ground. Take a sack. You cannot make that pass. And everyone, and listen, I like Derek. I root for Derek and the Saints. Obviously, I have some money on them to make the playoffs, to win the division. That play cannot happen. And it's plays like that that make me go, my divisional bet's going to be a little more difficult to hit than I thought, because not everything's going to be as easy as the first 2 weeks. You're going to be in some of these tie games against high-level defenses. You cannot make, that's a bottom 10 quarterback type decision. It's just, that's low-level ball. And embarrassing for a guy that's been in the league a decade, making the money he's making, to even just make that decision. I'm at a loss for words when the ball left his hands, because it was just so dumb. It did not need to happen. And it's one rookie quarterbacks, whatever. A guy with that much experience just pissed me off. I had the Saints as well. eBay Motors is here for the ride. You know, the first car I ever got, I was 16 years old, and my grandpa gave me a ride. And like any young lad who got a car that, let's face it, would not have been my first choice, I had to touch it up a little bit. And we tinted out the windows. We added a big subwoofer to the back. and you could hear me from miles away coming home. My parents sure loved me for that one. So did my neighbors. But I think the key to any young person getting a car is to personalize a little bit, because you're probably not going to get your dream car. And as you get older, you kind of become a car person or you don't. But you definitely have preferences, right? Some of us like bigger cars. I know I do. I've only had big cars, SUVs. And there are certain non-negotiables. I like 3 rows of seats. Now, ideally, I don't have kids right now, so I take out that 3rd row of seat, and I like a big, I like a lot of trunk room. Some people, don't like SUVs, like smaller cars. I've never been that big since my high school car of tinting the windows. I don't care if you see me or not, but I know some people, like, the first thing they do is tint the windows. It's crazy. The older you get, I had to have the subwoofers. The subwoofer, I couldn't listen to music for 5 minutes with the subwoofer like I did when I was younger. But there is something very, very special about that first car. I don't care how many cars you get since, how much money you make to get sweeter cars. You never quite forget that first ride and some of the memorable moments that you had in it in your high school years. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Underrated. Speaking of that game, Saquon Barkley is a badass. And we can debate whether you should take running backs high or not. When you do take them high, there better be no debate about their ability. They may get hurt. Obviously, you come to a line where how much are they worth? But if you are going to pull the trigger on a guy in the top 10, especially at 2 overall, you should be like, yeah, this guy's a total package. See with Bijan Robinson, really high pick. No one debates. Freak show. Remember Christian McCaffrey was drafted 8th. No debate. Freak show. Saquon Barkley today, who has battled injuries, and for the majority of his career, played on a shitty team. I mean, really bad. 2 years ago, they were solid. Best year that he ever had with the Giants. They won 9 games. And for most of that, his offensive line was atrocious. Now he has a good offensive line with weapons around him, and you're seeing the dude shine. And to me, the coolest part, like, to be a great running back, the last attribute, an unnecessary attribute, like, you do not need this to be a great running back. Breakaway high-end speed. You do not need it. There's been a small select guys that have truly had it, right? Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson. Saquon is one of those guys. When he gets in the open field, he looks like a Ferrari. And today you saw that speed on basically the game-winning touchdown, which was the deciding factor in the game because the Eagles were in major trouble. And Saquon said, remember that $27 million guaranteed you gave me? Remember all those dudes, guards and centers, getting $40, $50 million in free agency? I got $27 million. And every time so far this season we've left the field at the end of the game, you went, yeah, I might be the best player on the field. How about them apples? Overrated. The hype on Caleb Williams reminds me of Trevor Lawrence. It's so strong, and we've been hearing it for so long that the expectations get out of whack. You expect to turn on their games. This happened to Lawrence that year with Urban Meyer, and it's happening right now with Eberflus and the Bears. Multiple touchdowns. Just guys slicing and dicing the defense. You turn on the game, and you go, is this guy good? That's the first thing you think to yourself. Is this guy a good player? It's crazy how off we are right now on the hype of this player and what this player actually is. Now, the difference, even if he has a terrible season, he has physical attributes that Bryce Young does not possess. arm strength, his body type, his athleticism. So I don't care how shitty this year ends up being. Just say worst case scenario, it doesn't get better. A lot more to work with there. But we all have to agree the start of the season, we can blame whoever we want. Virginia McCaskey, who's 107 years old, Eberflus with his haircut and his beard, Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, the shitty O-line. There are plays, independent of all those people, all those variables, that he is not making. And honestly, they're not that close. Like when a guy is open and no one's around you, 15, 20, 30 yards down the field, when you are that hyped up, when you're the number one pick, and we've seen you do it in college, people expect you to make the pass. And then it flies 7 yards over the guy's head. We're all sitting on our couch going, what the fuck is this? Like, we're all thinking it. So I'm not acting like this guy's career's over. Obviously, everyone's going to blame everyone else except him, but we have to admit, so far, there's probably not a more overrated player in the league, which is unfair because he had never even played in the league. But just based on hype, it's not even close. Underrated. Colin and I talked about this, talked about it last week. LaFleur. I mean, everyone for 2 years, like, Mike McDaniel. It's like, yeah, guys, we get it. Funny glasses, funny pants. I'll bet against that guy every time in a big game. Yet LaFleur, who's been to the playoffs twice with Rodgers, again with Jordan Love, 3 times, won a playoff game last year on the road with Jordan Love and had the 49ers on the ropes, just won back-to-back games with Malik Willis. I love Kevin O'Connell. Seems like a really impressive guy. I've never met him personally. Obviously, what he's doing with Sam Darnold speaks for itself. Been in the playoffs one time at home and lost to the Giants. Pretty sure, oh yeah, Daniel Jones was the quarterback to beat him. So it's like, listen, love Kevin O'Connell a lot. Let's see him win a big game, and then we can put him in that class with some of these other guys. I've seen LaFleur win playoff games. I know he's lost a few too, but been there a lot. And now he's winning games with Jordan Love, who was a nobody, 33 touchdowns last year, playoff win on the road, almost won another playoff game on the road. Now he's winning games with Malik Willis on the road. I think we need to put a little respect on old LaFleur's name. Overrated. Passing in college. Do you know that the University of Michigan, since Jim Harbaugh became the coach back in 2014, is 6-0 when their quarterback passes for less than 100 yards? In a day and age when we love the pass, and trust me, I love the pass, you love the pass is fun. Michigan, because of their style and how they dominate on defense and how well they run the ball, we saw them do it last year when they basically refused to pass an entire half against a top 15 team in Penn State and won the game. And they beat USC, where their quarterback, I'm pretty sure, threw for like 35 yards. And they did not have a passing game. It didn't exist. They had to go 90 yards to win the game. And they couldn't pass. And they did it. So, listen, I'm not trying to anoint Michigan. You're obviously not going to beat Ohio State. I don't even think you could beat Penn State by not passing the ball. But that was an impressive win. And, again, 6-0 in the Harbaugh era, which counts Sharon Moore right now, when they've passed for under 100 yards. Last but not least, underrated. I was mainly listening to the 49ers Rams broadcast with Sanchez and Kugler, whoever the play-by-play guy is. He's good. Sanchez can be a little goofy, but he's fine. But I would go back and forth because I was like, I just want to hear Tom Brady. And I saw last week, I didn't listen to the Tom Brady game last week. And I heard he improved a lot. And I'm not just trying to shit on Tom Brady to do this. Like, I'm a Tom Brady fan. Have been for 20 plus years. Admire everything he stands for, work ethic, playing, all that stuff. But I do view my broadcasters as entertainment. Collinsworth, he's an entertainer. Gruden went from 0 to 150 subscribers on YouTube. Why? He's entertaining. He knows how to play the game. That's all this is. And I listen to probably I don't know, a decent chunk today of Brady. Obviously, he sounds better than week one because he's not pausing all the time, but I don't really know like what he's bringing to the table, right? Beside, I'm Tom Brady because he's not super entertaining. He's not like Mr. Goofy Romo. He's not some huge personality behind the mic like Collinsworth or Gruden was. And it's just like nerdy football. That's not really what people are looking for in these broadcasts. I'm just coming to hang. I'm coming to hang with Tom freaking Brady for 3 hours. Let's just kick it. Let's just watch some ball. You throw some stories out. Let me hear some stuff. And listen, I'll be the first to admit, obviously, trying anything at that level, 3 games in, I'm not expecting him to be a finished product, but I'm just trying to map this out where it's going to go. And I go, like, what's going to be his thing? Because I don't think we're getting ever Collinsworth or Gruden, kind of the fun, crazy, goofy guy. Obviously, Madden was the best at that. And his personality isn't really Romo. And he's not ever going to be like Aikman, asshole, blasting people, which is my personal favorite. I don't know. I don't really see it. Now, I understand from a value standpoint, having Tom part of your company, advertisers. I'm not one of these moronic media people that just hate everything business. Like, you're not worth that. Like, he might be worth double that to them. But I'm just talking about from an entertainment standpoint, sitting there watching the game. It pains me to say this. I just think he's pretty bad. He's pretty bleh. Just meh. There's just nothing there. If it wasn't Tom Brady and just former player X, you wouldn't even notice. You'd be like, nothing would stand out. Which, again, a little like Caleb, the hype, he's got his own commercial. Not for like Tom, Allstate, or Dell Computers, or Samsung TVs. They literally made him a commercial about him becoming a broadcaster. So the hype, like Caleb, like Trevor Lawrence, just it couldn't be any higher. And you're watching and you go, let's be real. I don't know. Again, pains me to say this. Kind of sucks.